Hello, folks, YouTubians, kids, grandparents, animals, monkeys, whatever else you are. I'm happy you're here. Today we're going to talk about the Fletcher Munson curve, or in other words, the equal loudness curve. If you don't know what that is, stay tuned. There's one little snafu though, okay? Bear with me. We're going to have to look at a graph. Okay, wait. Don't go. Don't come back. Come back. Take a seat. Okay? It's worth it. I know what you're thinking. Like, come on, Alex. I'm not in school. I don't want to look at graphs. What is this, math class? No, it's not. Okay? You don't want me teaching you math. Well, I mean, maybe you do. It'd be fun. But it's not that. Okay? All right, let's not ignore traditions. Let's see that. Let's see the what do you call it? The bumper video. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Okay, so I'm gonna show you the graph. I don't want you to be scared. Okay, it's over there. Okay, and let's just look at it. There it is. Okay, not that bad, right? Okay, so Fletcher Munson, I think it's two guys. They basically did a scientific experiment that proved how the human ear listens to sound. And don't freak out. What this is saying is basically for you to hear a sound, if you were to play a tone at 2,000 hertz or 2 kilohertz, and you were to play a tone at 100 hertz, you would have to have 100 hertz. Let's see, 1, 2, but like say 15 decibels louder for you to perceive them the same volume. Right? Isn't that whack? Okay, let me say that again. If you were to play a tone at 100 hertz, right there, you would have to play it, what is that? 10, 20, about almost 20 decibels louder than 2 kilohertz in order for you to hear them at the same volume. I know it's bizarre and you're thinking, well, how can that be, right? If you've never seen this graph, you're thinking that you just hear all frequencies from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz the same volume no matter what. And it's not true. What's happened over our evolutionary process is that humans have become more acutely sensitive to the range between, say, 1K and 4K. And there's a good reason for that. And it's because all of our languages, no matter what dialect or what language you speak, kind of exists in this range. And I'm not talking about your human voice. I'm talking about the sibilants and plosives in your voices, okay? The things that sound like ch and k and duh and buh and whatever, okay? The things that make language distinguishable at far distances, even when they're quiet or when you whisper, that all exists right in here. So we've all adapted as a race in general. I mean, I know some of you are probably freshly evolved. Maybe you haven't adapted, but for the most of us, we're listening to things in this range a lot more clear. Okay, so don't get hung up on this graph. It's just called the Fletcher Munson equal loudness curve. You can check it out on Google, read the Wikipedia, do your thing, do your research, and I'm going to tell you why this is important to know. Okay? But the takeaway from this is that the lower the frequency, the louder you actually have to play it before you can hear it at the same, what you will perceive the same volume as the range is down here. Okay? All right. Let's go back to Bitwig. Oh, that was intense. We're safe though. We're here. We're back. We're back in Bitwig. Let me just say, I'm glad that you clicked on this video because I know that the title is not all that catchy, right? Like I could make a video, the worst video ever, and name it like super dope future bass or something. And I'll get a built-in audience of like 1,000, right? Just from that kind of clickbait. And I am going to make one of those videos because I think it's just, you might as well know about future bass. But this is one of those videos where you watch it, maybe you've just stumbled across it, and I'm hoping that it's one of those videos where it gives you an edge on your friends who are also making beats. I'm just glad that you're here, okay? Because it's important information. And how is it important? Well, let's listen to my track for a sec. This is a bit of a cheesy track that I've just kind of thrown together. Let's hear what it sounds like. Okay, nothing crazy. I know it's a little bit cheesy right now. Let me just justify this quick before we move on. These drums, they're just stock drums. I haven't designed them much. I'm just kind of using them to find the beat that I kind of want to have here. And in general, I'm writing this song for a vocalist. I don't know who the vocalist is. If you are a vocalist, let me know, because let's collab. Okay, I'm always looking for vocalists. And the cellos are just, cellos, and I got some noises in there. The sub doesn't really work with the song, but the notes I think are okay. I just need to fix that up. I'll probably re-perform the guitar, and I might do this section an octave lower on the guitar as well, just so that I have it for future reference. Okay, all right, so that there we go. There's my shitty song is now justified. I feel okay about it. Right now I know that you're not judging me overly hard. I mean, you might be, and that's cool. I kind of open myself up to that when I make YouTube videos, I guess. But let's get back to this Fletcher Munson curve. Bam. Okay, now on my master I've put a spectrum analyzer. Okay, let me turn this down a bit so I can think while I play the song. Okay, now I have gone before I've added this spectrum analyzer on, and I've somewhat balanced the levels, whether it's with gain or channel volume. Okay, and what do you notice? That this curve somewhat resembles the Fletcher Munson curve in reverse, and that's because what's happening is I just can't hear these frequencies as well as I can hear these frequencies, and therefore I'm boosting anything. Down here is your sub bass, your kicks, right? Your bass guitar, even cellos are kind of in and around here. And then I got my crazy stuff, like my little noises and stuff, they're kind of up here, right? So when you look at this curve, see that? I've boosted it there because my ear just can't hear it as well, and so I open it up, and then over here you see another little boost because of those trippy noises and how they kind of dance around, right? Okay, so in this case I know that I'm making this track for a vocalist, even though I don't know who the vocalist is yet, right? And so in that case, what I'll probably do is on my master I'll put an EQ. I'd probably use the Pro Q, the Fab filter. Those things are so sick. Let's do a 5. And I would take out, 1 point, let's see, put it back to 1 there. We'll reduce that, and I'll reduce this, and I'll listen to my track, okay? Not because I'm ever gonna keep this kind of EQ on it, but I want to make sure that that my track still sounds good even with something stupid like this on it. Okay, and the reason is because I'm not sure once I get a vocalist on here, whether it's male or female, I'm not sure what I'm gonna have to cut, what I'm gonna have to reduce as far as EQing goes. So if my track sounds good with this kind of curve on it, I know that because of the Fletcher Munson curve and what they've taught us about human evolution, that they're going to sing somewhere kind of in this range. And so if I cut these frequencies from my master and my song sounds good still, I still have clarity in the bottom, I still have some rich high end or some good rhythmic things happening, it's still a little bit bouncy. I know that no matter what I do end up cutting, when I go to mix it, even though I will not have this on my master when I actually make the track, but I'll know at that point that it's still going to sound good, right? Anything that I have more than this is just extra, right? Okay, so again, let's look at this curve, the Fletcher Munson curve. Remember, between here, we'll say 500 hertz and 4 or 5 kilohertz. That's the range that you're concerned with, and that's going to encompass pretty much every vocalist. That's at least going to give you the kind of clarity that you need in order for you to understand the lyrics. Okay, and so very often, if I'm writing a song and a song is specific made for a vocalist, I'll bring in an EQ. I know I'm repeating myself, but it's just what you do. I'm bringing an EQ. I kind of cut those frequencies. I listen. And I listen to hear if it's still a decent song, right? It's not going to sound the same. You shouldn't expect it to sound the same. You're not going to make it sound great like that, but it should still have a little oomph, right? It should just be a little bit catchy even still. That way, when you add in vocals and these go back to normal and then something's conflicting with your vocals, you'll know that whatever it is that you have to cut out as far as EQing goes to accommodate the vocals, your track is still going to sound relatively decent. Okay, so that's the one way that it helps you, that the Fletcher Munson, those two brilliant pricks, or one, whatever. I mean, like, who would name their kid Fletcher-Munson? So it's got to be two people, right? Okay. Another way that it helps you out is everybody these days, because nowadays we're not allowed to have music get quiet at any time. I don't know why I typed in filter. Peak limiter, all right? Nowadays in music, we're not allowed to have music go quiet. And I know what you're thinking. You're saying, Alex, I've definitely heard songs on the radio that go quiet. And I'm saying, no, you haven't. You've perceived them as quiet, but if you were to put a view meter on your radio, it would probably hover around 0 dB at all times. Okay? I know that sounds totally bizarre, but what's happening is when you think it's actually getting quieter, what they're doing is just removing some instrumentation, okay? And even if the vocalist sounds like they're whispering, they're getting all sensitive like this, and you can hear all that like breathiness, right? Like you're listening to some female vocalist and she's like, and she's breathing into the microphone before every time she sings. Yeah, that's still boosted to the same volume as it is when she's screaming into the microphone. It doesn't matter. It's just that your brain perceives it as it being quieter, right? So what happens nowadays when you look at finished tracks that are mastered by modern artists, they're just slammed through this peak limiter, and it looks like you've gone in here with a crayon and colored in the entire track, right? When it's printed, it's just solid. There's nothing there. Long gone are the days where we could have quietness, right? Like Pink Floyd and Zeppelin, where there's just time to breathe, where you got no pun intended with Pink Floyd, where you just got those moments where it actually got quieter. Your ears got a break. It kind of prepped you up. It built hype, and then it just smashed. And then you're riding the peak out because you've never heard. The contrast between the quiet and the loud were so great that you're just like riding this wave of sonic ecstasy. And those days are gone. Okay, gone. It's about future bass now. Okay. That was horribly pessimistic. I'm sorry. But anyway, Fletcher Munson. Okay, so what's happening? You've gone and set your levels to what you think sounds good, and the curve looks something like this. Watch my mouse. It goes like that because you can't hear that worth of shit, and then it comes down because you hear these frequencies really well, and then it kind of comes back like that, right? Am I right? Just put this spectrum analyzer on all your songs, okay? And then and post your results. I'd love to see them, actually. It's be a good social experiment. Okay, so what's happening? So that signal is going into your peak limiter, right? And it's important to realize what frequencies are tripping this threshold, right? Because a peak limiter, it doesn't give a shit. This sets this line, and it's like, if don't come near me, don't touch me. If anything at all comes through this line, I'm gonna punch you in the face, right? That's peak limiter. Good old peak limiter in his aggressive ways. So what's happening is the sounds that you can hear really well aren't likely tripping the peak limiter, but the ones that you can't hear with a shit are just getting slammed into this peak limiter. It's like putting a brick on your gas pedal and aiming for a brick wall. It's just, right? Because the difference in volume is staggering. It could be like a 20 dB difference. And just for a point of reference, the way the decibel scale works is if you have a sound that's 10 dB, and then you have another sound that is 13 dB, so it's 3 dB louder, the rule is that second sound is twice as loud, okay? So 20 dB is not twice as loud as 10 dB, okay? 13 dB is twice as loud as 10 dB. It goes up by 3. Every 3 dB, twice as loud. So that's insane, right? Just let that sink in for a second. And that's, that's just something to think about. So it's using the Fletcher Munson curve, now, it's just important to know what frequencies you're shoving in to your peak limiter, isn't it? It's important to know that when you put it into any kind of compressor. A peak limiter is just a different type of compressor, really, right? Or a de-esser or anything like that. Multiband, it's important to know, okay? And so you can make a decision as to the sounds that you need to hear, that you hear really well, and the ones that you can't really hear. Well, peak limiter, and that's kind of why I have a problem with using peak limiters. I use them because you have to adapt to survive these days, but I just have a problem with painting this master track. Like I miss the days where you could get quiet in volume, right? Like, you imagine printing modern tracks to vinyl with just the way they are digitally. The needle would skip out of the grooves. It's just way too much for those records. And so I guess maybe that's why they did it back in the day. I don't really know. But that's just important to realize. Okay, so the third way that this is going to help you, right? The first is for songwriting, to know if you don't have a vocalist yet, like in my case, to leave out the certain range and make sure the song sounds good. The second way is to realize what you're putting into your peak limiter, right? Because if you can reduce the lows, even though it doesn't sound as good during the mixing, and you kind of have a more steady curve like that, and then you put it into the peak limiter, just realize that might actually sound better than just smashing the lows and then putting it into a peak limiter. And as a rule of thumb, I've seen a lot of guys nowadays, before they even do anything on their track, they're taking a peak limiter, putting it on their master, okay? Because they're writing into it, they're mixing into it, and that way you're setting the levels and you're doing everything with the instrumentation according to how it sounds through the peak limiter. And that's actually a really good way to work, okay? You should maybe try that. Okay, so the last way that it helps you is in the live game, okay? If I'm gonna take this track and play it live, very likely I'm gonna have my computer playing quietly, okay? Now, I work in live, and I don't know if you do or not, or if you know much about how the setup works in live, but it's pretty extensive. It's in the easiest way I can describe it is it goes from your computer to a console, to a crossover, to the following speakers, to whatever speakers, okay? The crossover reads all the frequencies the way this spectrum analyzer is, and dedicates speakers to it. So it might say, depending on how you have the crossover set, it might say, oh, okay, all these frequencies below 120, they're going to these speakers, which are subwoofers. These mid-range frequencies that we're getting, they're going to these speakers. And then the really high-end ones, they're going to those speakers, tweeters, right? So that would be a line array, and then your subs would be there as well. Okay, so on the console that your computer is plugged into will have its own gain and channels and stuff like that on it. Okay, so that means you don't have to have your computer's volume set like this. Well, I mean, what they'll do, if the sound guy comes up, he'll say, oh, just put it like that, right? But no, actually do slam it just like that. Have your computer volume all the way. But on your master, go like this, turn it down there, okay? Before the peak limiter. Because what's happening now is you're retaining that nice mix curve that you spend all your time making, okay? And this way, you're not slamming it through a peak limiter and it's making all the sounds the same, right? You're reducing it to the volume the sound guy wants you to do it. You're avoiding the peak limiter because in this case, you don't need to use it as much. It's just a protection circuit now, right? It's just protecting your computer's output at that point. And now the guy can go and gain up your volume, huge, put it into the crossover, and then use these massively extensive, overpowered amplifiers to power each speaker independently. And then your sound guy will know, okay? He's going to know the club. He probably works there on the daily. And he's going to know, oh, I need more low end. I need more high end. Have trust in that guy. He will take care of that for you. But the important thing here to realize is that now this is a time where you get to really let your mix shine, right? You're not just listening to a peak limiter like we always are nowadays in our cars and our headphones. You actually get to let your mix out, right? And the consoles, the crossovers, the amplifiers, and the speakers at live venues are made for that. They were made for live performances, okay? They weren't made for peak limiters on a single computer, okay? So make use of that. Check that out. And then at that point, I would suggest, because we've all adapted to not doing this, right? I would suggest that, first of all, play a show where the way you normally do, walk out into the crowd, and listen and realize that the sound sounds different when the place is full of people compared to when it's empty, like big time. People absorb sound, okay? And so walk into the crowd, stand in the middle, stand behind the crowd, and have a listen, okay? Next show, try this way. And then go back into the crowd, listen, walk into the middle, walk into the back, and just have a good listen and compare the results and make little tweaks in that way. Okay, so how did Fletcher Munson help you with this? Well, because again, the frequencies that you're going to hear the most are in this 2 to 4K, right? That's where we speak generally. And so you want those to be loud, right? And I know that sounds weird because you also want your bass loud. Well, again, at a venue, they can do both loud. They're separated. They're not the same speaker, right? The bass has its own thing going on. It's got a whole ecosystem dedicated to just blasting the bass, and the sound guy will know how to take care of that. And then you want your vocals heard. You want all the cool shit, all the instruments that you worked so hard to create, you want them heard too. And you have to realize that if a big 8-foot mofo stands in front of you, in between you and the speaker, he will muffle these frequencies and won't at all affect these ones, okay? And that's just how physics works. These are bigger wavelengths and they'll go around them, but it'll muffle those. So you're gonna need these to be loud enough, okay? And so in that case, the real best setup that you could have is to have an interface plugged into your computer where you have a sub output and then your left and right, okay? Which has everything in it, okay? And then give that to your sound guy. He can take the subwoofer frequencies or like the really, really low shit that's in your mix, and he can independently mix them with a channel fader, gain them up. He can do his thing with that, and then give him a left and right mix also that has everything in it, like a stereo mix, and then he can go and do whatever if he has to turn it into mono, he's got to do that. If he's got to boost it or cut it or EQ it or whatever he's got to do that's appropriate for the venue, he can do that. Oh, I'm out of breath, man. So what's the take home from this? 1, Fletcher Munson, check that shit out. Watch another video or two on it maybe. And you know, familiarize yourself with it. Also, don't ignore this, okay? Vaans. This is never mind. Forget it. Don't worry about that. 2, if you're writing a song for a vocalist, try that cut thing that I did, okay? And check that out. 3, pay close attention what you're feeding into your dynamics. Anything that's dynamic, compressors, limiters, de-essers, multi-band compressors, whatever it is, just check it out. It's worth knowing, because oftentimes the sounds that you do hear are not the ones tripping the thresholds on these things if you're not careful with your filtering and things like that, okay? 3, if you're going to play live, then I should almost make a whole video on how live setups are made, and then you'll understand how to better suit them. But just for now, take my word for it. If they're asking you to reduce volume, don't do this, okay? Put that before the peak limiter and turn it down a little bit, okay? And then just make it a decision, because you can always turn that back up and this down if you really don't like it. If you don't trust me, that's okay. I mean, I can't say that I know every type of venue setup. I'm just saying in general, the bigger venues have these crossovers, and so in this way you'll finally get the luxury of not having to slam it through here, right? Like most of the time you open up a track that's made and it's put through a peak limiter so bad it sounds like this, right? Like it just shits it out. Like you just take you take all your music, you put it through a peak limiter, and it's just like beautiful music, la 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 la. It goes into the peak limiter and comes out like right? Okay, I think that's enough. I think I've fed your brain probably enough. I know I'm done with talking. I've been talking for too long. Okay, all right, I hope you subscribe. I hope you liked my video. I'm glad that you checked it out. I'm really happy that whatever brought you here, whether it's the fact that you just trust me now, even though the title was shitty, and you're just curious to see what I have to say, or if you actually know what the Fletcher Munson curve is and you want to gain a little more info on it. Both of those situations make me super happy. And again, I'm here for you guys, okay? I just want to educate you. I don't get paid for this shit. I just get the satisfaction of knowing that maybe somewhere one day I get to have my little impact on a producer and the music that they make, okay? All right, so if you could give me a subscribe, I'd love you for it. And I'll see you in the next video, which I don't know what it's going to be yet. If you have any suggestions, leave them down below in the comment section. Email me directly. And until next time, take care.